My name is Bray Martha. I'm 41 years old, and I suppose you could say my life is atypical. If you had told me 8 years ago that I would end up here, I would have probably burst out laughing. But here I am, sitting in my kitchen staring at a half-empty cup of coffee, trying to make sense of everything that has happened. It's been just me and my son Jake for the past 8 years. Since the divorce, I felt like I was alone in the world. He was only 10. When his father left, he didn't cry. Not in front of me, at least. But I could see it in his eyes, in the way he would sit by the window, waiting as if his father might come back. Of course, he never came back. I made myself a promise back then. I swore I would do everything to help Jake get his old life back. He always had one, a family, even if it was just the two of us. And for a while, I think I managed to hold things together. He was such a sweet child, gentle, quiet, always ready to help me around the house. But as he grew up, things started to change. He started to change, and, to be honest, so did I. Jake turned 19 this year. He's not a child anymore, but sometimes I think he's still trying to figure out what it means to be a man. He's always been a bit reserved. He doesn't go out much and doesn't really have close friends. I've tried to talk to him about it, but he shrugs and says, everything's fine. I know it's not, though. A mother always knows. About a month ago, he came to me with something I never expected to hear. He told me he was using my things, my underwear. At first, I didn't believe it. Then I understood what he meant. And when I understood, I felt the ground give way beneath my feet. Beneath my feet. I wanted to scream, to shout, to demand an explanation, but I didn't. He looked so ashamed, so embarrassed. Standing there, head bowed, unable to look me in the eye. And in that moment, I realized something. It wasn't just about what he had done. It was about what he was, about what he couldn't say. He wasn't a pervert or a monster. He was my son, and he was struggling. He was struggling against something he didn't understand, against urges he couldn't control. And I couldn't bring myself to make it worse. So, I made a choice. I struck a deal with him. I told him he could do what he felt he needed to do, but there would be rules. He could relieve himself, but he had to do it in front of me. That way I wanted to make sure he was safe and that he didn't cross any lines. In return, I told him I would invite whoever I wanted to the house without him asking questions or judging me. It wasn't the ideal solution, but it was the only one that came to mind at the time. Since then, things have changed. Jake seems more relaxed now, less tense. He still doesn't talk much, but he doesn't avoid me like he used to. And me? Well, I've started to realize that this arrangement isn't just for him. It's for me, too. It gives me the freedom I've craved for years, the freedom to live my life without having to walk on eggshells. Sometimes, late at night, I lie awake and wonder if I made the right choice. I wonder what people would think if they knew. Would they call me a bad mother? A failure? Maybe. But they don't know Jake. They don't know what it's like. It's like seeing your child suffer and not knowing how to fix it. He doesn't know what's happening to him. It's like we're barely holding on, trying to keep everything from collapsing. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if this arrangement will work in the long run or if it's just a time bomb waiting to explode. But for now, this is our life. It's what we've chosen. And as complex and chaotic as it is, I'm doing my best for him, for both of us. If you're still following, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories like this. Believe me, there's so much more to discover. This agreement wasn't something I had planned. It wasn't something I'd thought through. It just happened. One moment I was sitting there trying to figure out how to talk to Jake about what he'd told me, and the next, the words just slipped out of my mouth as if they had a will of their own. You can continue like this, I said, but I want certain things in return. He looked at me as if I had just spoken in another language. His face palled, his hands clenched into fists on the kitchen table. For a second, I thought he was going to get up and leave. Maybe I wanted him to. Maybe I was hoping he'd say no, tell me I was crazy, and storm out of the room. But he didn't. He just sat there staring at me, his mouth opening and closing as if he didn't know what to say. "What do you mean?" he finally asked, his voice trembling softly, as if he wasn't sure he really wanted to know the answer. I took a deep breath. "I mean, you can continue, but only in front of me. And in return, I can live my life as I see fit. I can invite people over without you saying anything about it. No judgment, no questions. We both get what we need." "Okay." There was a long silence after that. Jake didn't say a word. He stared at me, his eyebrows furrowed, his eyes tense. I could see he was trying to process what I just said, to make sense of it. I was doing the same thing. The words were out there now, hanging in the air between us, and I couldn't take them back. Not that I was sure I wanted to. Finally, he nodded slightly, barely enough for me to notice. "Okay," he said, his voice so quiet I could hardly hear it. "If that's what you want." And that was the clear's throat deal. The first time I thought I was going to be sick, sitting on the edge of my bed, my heart pounding, my palms sweaty. I told myself this was what he needed, that it was better than the alternative, that I was doing this for him. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. It never is. Jake walked into the room, his eyes fixed on the floor. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. We didn't look at each other. Not really. I just sat there pretending it was nothing, as if it were just another day. And when it was over, he left. He left without a word. I sat still for a long time afterwards, staring at the wall, trying to convince myself everything was fine, that this was normal. It's strange how you can get used to things. At first, each time felt like a punch in the gut, but with time it became easier. Or maybe I just got better at pretending it didn't bother me. I told myself it wasn't hurting anyone, that it was just different. I told myself I was being practical, making the best of a bad situation. And for a while, I believed it. Jake, on the other hand, was another story. He tried to act like everything was okay, but he couldn't. I could see it in his eyes, the shame, the guilt. He never said it out loud, but I knew he hated himself for needing this, for needing me. And every time I saw that look on his face, my heart broke a little more. But what could I do? He was my son, my only child. I couldn't turn my back on him. I couldn't let him drown in his own problems while I stood by and watched. So I did what I always did. I gathered my courage and carried on for him, for me, for us. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. Most of the time, I don't even know what the right thing is anymore. But this is where we are. It's the life we've built. And for now, it's enough. It has to be. At first, it wasn't so different. Jake stuck to a routine, if you could call it that. Once in the morning, sometimes in the evening. It wasn't predictable, but it was manageable. I told myself it was just a phase, that he would grow out of it, that it would fade once the novelty wore off. But I was wrong. Instead of slowing down, it only intensified slowly at first. One morning turned into an afternoon, then into the night, then 2 mornings in a row. I started to notice how the hours of the day began to revolve around this arrangement. There were fewer moments when the air in the house wasn't heavy with what we had agreed to. I tried to ignore it, to push it down, but it was always there, like a shadow. The first time I felt truly uncomfortable, I was folding laundry. Jake walked in without a word. His expression was tense, his body language was stiff. I knew what he wanted. Before he even said anything, I undressed and sat on the edge of the couch, waiting for him to finish. But this time, something had changed. He didn't leave right after he was done. He lingered, looking at me as if he was trying to say something, but couldn't find the words. I felt my stomach knot. The weight of the moment pressed down on me like a stone. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended. He nodded, but I could see it in his eyes. It wasn't just about relief anymore. It was something more. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying the day over and over in my head. I told myself not to think too much about it, that I was imagining things. But deep down, I knew it was no longer just a way for him to cope. It had become something he needed, something he was starting to rely on. And the scariest part was that I didn't know how to stop it. In the days that followed, Jake's behavior changed even more. He stopped trying to hide it. He stopped waiting for the right moment. It was as if he no longer cared about the boundaries, as if the deal we'd struck gave him free rein to do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. And maybe I was the one who gave him that freedom, wasn't I? The first time I teased him, it was an accident. I was in the kitchen making dinner when he walked in. I saw him. He was watching me move, his eyes following my every step. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I wanted to lighten the mood, or maybe I was testing him to see how far he would go. But without thinking, I took off my jacket, letting it drop onto the counter. His breath hitched, and I turned to him. A small smile touched the corner of my lips. "Is something wrong?" I asked, pretending not to notice the blush on his cheeks. He didn't answer. He just turned and left the room, but I could feel the weight of his gaze lingering even after he was gone. After that, it became a game. I'd put my hair up, let my shirt right up a little too high, leave my jeans unbuttoned a little too long. Nothing explicit, just enough to make him shiver, to make him hesitate before looking away. It gave me a strange sense of control, a power I had never felt before. And I hated how much I loved it. But with each passing day, the line between us blurred a little more. He started seeking me out more often, finding excuses to be near me even when he didn't need to. And I told myself it was harmless, that it didn't mean anything. But the truth was, I no longer knew what it meant. I wasn't sure of anything anymore. There was a moment late one night when everything came to a head. Jake was sitting across from me in the living room, his eyes fixed on me while I read a book. The air was thick with an unspoken tension, the kind that gives you goosebumps and makes your heart race. I looked up at him, meeting his gaze, and for the first time, I didn't look away. And neither did he. The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating, until I finally cleared my throat and stood up. "I'm going to bed," I said, my voice barely audible. He nodded, but I could feel his eyes on me as I walked away. I don't know how we got here. I don't know how I let things go this far, but here we are trapped in a vicious cycle I don't know how to break. No matter how much I want to believe I'm still in control, I can't shake the feeling that I've already lost everything. It was only when Henrik Franklin came into our lives that everything started to unravel. I met him through a friend, one of those chance encounters you don't pay much attention to at first. But Henrik wasn't the kind of man you easily forget. He was charming in a way that felt natural, as if he didn't have to try to make you smile. He had this laugh that filled the room, disarming, and it made me feel lighter, as if, for the first time in years, I could let my guard down. Henrik lowered his guard. At first, he started coming over more often. It was just for dinner or a drink on the patio, but soon he stayed later, lingering in the living room after Jake had gone to his room. And then one night, he didn't leave at all. I wasn't trying to hide it from Jake. It wasn't planned, but I couldn't. Ignore the look on his face the next morning when he saw Henrik sitting at the kitchen table, sipping his coffee as if he'd been there for years. It was subtle, but I knew my son well enough to recognize the tension in his jaw, the way his hands tightened slightly around his plate. At first, Jake didn't say anything. He just observed from the corner of his eye, silent and brooding. But as the weeks passed and Henrik's presence in the house became more frequent, his silence turned into something sharper. He started snapping at me over little things, forgotten errands, mismatched socks, trivial annoyances that seemed to take on disproportionate weight. I tried to ignore them, telling myself it was just his way of adjusting. But the truth was, I couldn't. The growing resentment between us was palpable and heavy, like a storm about to break. One evening, as Henrik and I were sitting on the couch laughing about something silly, Jake walked into the room. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, still watching us with an expression I couldn't decipher. When I looked up and met his gaze, I saw the pain, the anger, the confusion that had been simmering beneath the surface for weeks. Before I could say anything, he spoke in a low, trembling voice. "Do you even care anymore?" Those words cut through the air like a knife. Henrik looked at me, surprised, but I didn't take my eyes off Jake. "Jake, what are you talking about?" I asked, my voice steady even though my heart was pounding. He took a step closer, his fists clenched. "You don't care about me, about us, about what we've been doing has done to me." A deathly silence fell over the room. Even Henrik didn't dare move. I stood up slowly, searching Jake's face for some kind of explanation. "Jake, that's not true," I said softly. "Of course I care about you. Everything I've done, everything has been for you, for us." He shot back, his voice rising. "How can any of this be for me? You let this guy into our lives like it's nothing. You sit there laughing with him like I don't even exist." I felt the air leave my lungs. His words hit me harder than I had expected. "Jake," I said, reaching out toward him, but he stepped back before I could touch him. "I didn't know you felt this way." "Of course you didn't," he said bitterly. "You're too busy with your freedom or whatever. Do you even see me anymore? Or am I just convenient?" The silence that followed was deafening. Henrik shifted uncomfortably, muttering something about giving us space before slipping out the door. I barely noticed. All I could see was my son standing there, trembling with emotions I had ignored for far too long. That night, after Jake had stormed off to his room, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the empty coffee cup Henrik had left behind. His words played over and over in my head, each one hurting a little, more than the last. He was right. I hadn't thought about him. Not really. I had been so focused on trying to make this situation work, on convincing myself everything was okay, that I hadn't taken the time to think about what it was doing to him. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the full weight of my choices, of the deal I had made with Jake, of the boundaries we had crossed, of the lines we had blurred. It wasn't just about us anymore. It was about what we were becoming and the damage we were leaving in our wake. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there staring at the door, wondering if there was still a way to fix things or if it was already too late. The day after our fight, the house was eerily quiet. Jake stayed in his room. The door was closed and the air was heavy with unspoken tension. Sitting at the kitchen table, I stared into my coffee. The steam rose like a fog clouding my thoughts. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to do something. Whatever we had done to our relationship, it couldn't go on like this. Not for him, and not for me. Later in the afternoon, I knocked on his door. He didn't answer at first. I waited, my forehead against the doorframe. "Jake, please. I need to talk to you softly." Finally, the door creaked open. He stood there, his face closed off, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice trembling with everything I had, "for not seeing how much this hurt you for letting things go this far. I was wrong." His expression didn't soften immediately, but he stepped aside to let me in. I sat on the edge of his bed while he leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "We need help," I admitted. "Both of us. I can't pretend to know what I'm doing anymore, and I can't let us keep going down this path. I've already made too many mistakes, but I want to try to fix them if you'll let me." Jake didn't say much at first. He just nodded, his gaze fixed on the floor. But a few days later, we were sitting in a small office across from Rafael Cabrera, a family therapist I had found online. Raphael was a good man. His demeanor was calm and steady in a way that put you at ease even when you didn't want to talk. And at first, neither of us did. We just sat in silence, the weight of our story too heavy to put into words. But Raphael had a gift for breaking that silence, asking questions that weren't prying, but rather invitations. Slowly, Jake began to open up. He talked about the loneliness he'd felt since the divorce, the confusion he carried about our arrangement, and the resentment that had built up inside him. I listened, tears streaming down my face as I heard him put words to what I had ignored for far too long. In the weeks that followed, therapy became a part of our routine. It wasn't easy. There were days we left the office more exhausted than when we arrived. Days when I wondered if we were making any progress at all. But little by little, the walls between us began to come down. Raphael helped us establish boundaries, real boundaries. This time, I told Jake our agreement was over, that it had been a mistake, and that we needed to start over. At first, he struggled to adjust. There were moments I caught him slipping back into old habits, his frustration erupting in anger or tears. But with Raphael's guidance, we found healthier ways to cope. Jake started keeping a journal, something I never thought he'd try, and even signed up for a local martial arts class where he found an outlet for his emotions. Slowly, I saw him change. He stood a little straighter, spoke with a bit more confidence, and began spending more time outside the house, building connections that weren't tied to me. And I had to confront myself, truly confront myself. Therapy forced me to face the choices I had made, how I had let my own fears and insecurities dictate my relationship with Jake. I had spent so much time trying to hold on to him, to fill the void left by the divorce, that I hadn't seen how much it was suffocating both of us. Letting go of that control, learning to trust him, and believing he could manage on his own was one of the hardest things I've ever done. One evening, months after our first therapy session, Jake and I were sitting on the porch watching the sun set on the horizon. He looked at me and said, "Thanks, Mom, for everything." It wasn't much, but it was enough. I reached over and squeezed his hand. A simple gesture that said more than words ever could. We're still finding our footing. Healing isn't a straight line. It's messy, complicated, and full of setbacks. But for the first time in a long time, I have hope that Jake will find his voice, and so will I. And even if we may never be able to completely erase our mistakes, we're learning to move forward together. Life doesn't come with an instruction manual, and if it did, I probably would have thrown mine away a long time ago. Jake and I have been through more trials than I ever thought we could survive, but somehow we're still here. We're still trying. We're still learning how to live differently. Now the house feels lighter. Maybe there's a kind of peace that comes from knowing we're finally working towards something better. Jake is finding his way. He's spending more time with friends, more time focusing on his own interests, and when our paths cross, it feels like we're meeting as individuals, not as two people trapped in a complicated arrangement we didn't fully understand. We still have our moments, of course. Old habits die hard, and there are days when the shadows of the past creep back in. But we talk about it now. We have the tools to navigate those rough patches, and we're not afraid to use them. Sometimes I look at him and see the little boy who used to sit by the window waiting for a father who never came back. But now I also see the young man he's becoming stronger, more self-aware, and capable of building a life that doesn't revolve around the pain of the past. As for me, I'm learning to live for myself again. Henrik and I didn't last. The foundation was too shaky, built on the chaos of my life at the time. But I don't regret it. It was a stepping stone, a reminder that I deserve happiness too, just not at the expense of my son's well-being. I've started taking night classes, something I'd always wanted to do, but never made time for. It's small, but it's mine. And in the quiet moments, when I'm sitting alone with my thoughts, I no longer feel the overwhelming guilt that used to consume me. Instead, I feel a cautious sense of peace, a belief that maybe, just maybe, we're going to be okay. Our story isn't pretty. It's raw, uncomfortable, and filled with choices I wish I could take back. But it's ours. And if sharing it helps even one person feel less alone in their own struggles, then maybe some good can come from it after all. So here we are, still healing, still growing, still trying to be better for each other and for ourselves. And for now, that's enough.